Obviously, Elation is broken, F the intro, but my Jiaoqiu buffs. Now hear me out, I ain't saying that Black Swan and Sparkle buffs aren't necessary. Black Swan is relevant to the plot and belongs in the Arkham Asylum team. Sparkle is basically the founding father of Elation. There are no complaints on my end. Before I continue the video, I want to point out that I won't be disclosing information about the leaks. Regardless whether you're aware of the changes or not, search them up in your own time. We need to address the elephant in the room, and that is Jiaoqiu.
Why did you say that name?
Yes, you heard that right. A Jiaoqiu mentioned in Big 2026. There has never been a character in gacha history who has been shafted, fell from grace, and gutted from his identity as hard as Jiaoqiu has. Don't correct me on that though. Now let's turn back the clocks and go over the worst character in Honkai Star Rail history, Jiaoqiu. On August 21st of 2024, Jiaoqiu's debut banner was released and there was a whole controversy surrounding his kit from the Acheron and Kafka subreddit communities. For starters, Jiaoqiu is a Foxian healer. Then where the is his healing? During beta testing, Jiaoqiu showed no signs of fulfilling his role as a healer. Instead, he leaned more towards being a debuffer that applied vulnerability. Jiaoqiu initially had the ability to infinitely stack vulnerability in earlier stages of his kit, and to make matters worse, these changes were made on the final testings of his kit, just before his release. Instead, his infinite stacking ultimate was capped at being triggered up to 6 times, with the limit resetting every time he used ultimate. With the way how Jiaoqiu quickly got kneecapped and rug pulled at the 11th hour of his release, he immediately became a downgrade to Runmei. With how relevant Runmei was at the time in the dot playstyle, this meant Jiaoqiu was a no-go in the archetype. In fact, the only way he was ever playable with dot was if you didn't own Runmei or pulled for his E2, which many players, including myself, were hesitant to do. On the Acheron side of things, Jiaoqiu simply became a more pricey peller, and it was up to the player whether or not they wanted to use one or the other. Whatever they chose, it didn't stop them from clearing endgame content or zero cycling for that matter. However, on June 11th of 2025, Cypher came along and changed everything. Absolute mania happened in the Acheron and Jiaoqiu community that it started to spread to subreddits that were unrelated to HSR, until everyone accepted that Cypher was the better option for Acheron comps. To put it in a nutshell, Jiaoqiu's earlier stages of his kit was a huge upgrade for Acheron and dot team comps, as well as being a great generalist support. The major changes to his kit throughout early testing, along with the last minute rug pull, changed his identity completely. Jiaoqiu went from being introduced as a Foxian healer to having no healing in his kit whatsoever, had so much potential that major parts of his kit were changed throughout his testings, and finally, just as Jiaoqiu was on his way to being released, Hoyo hits him with the final nail in the coffin and gutted him completely. Since Hoyo has started the campaign of buffing older characters, tons of possibilities opened up with the Honkai Star Rail player base demanding that certain characters are in desperate need of buffs. However, the characters that were announced to receive changes to their kits were Kafka, Jingliu, Blade, and Silverwolf. Now with Black Swan and Sparkle being officially announced as the 2 characters getting buffed, how long can we expect to see any Jiaoqiu buffs? Maybe even a whole rework, I don't know. But with the way Hoyo is handling supports and partner characters so far, I actually have high hopes about his character receiving massive changes when that time comes. Since Jiaoqiu at the moment is tied to Acheron team comps, bear in mind he's merely a side grade to the likes of Cypher, Tribi, Silverwolf, and RMC. Now I can imagine him fulfilling the same role as Ceridra does for Finon and Evernight does for Castris if he receives those changes. In my opinion, with the way Jiaoqiu was handled on his release, he comes off as the blueprint of the partner archetype. In case you aren't aware of what the term partner means in HSR, it's a term coined by Pridwin. It means that a character can only be paired with a small minority of characters to play at their full potential. In Jiaoqiu's case, the most we'll ever get out of his kit is with Acheron, since he can reliably generate stacks for Acheron's ultimate as well as inflicting unique debuffs on enemies. Again, the only problem with Jiaoqiu, he's easily replaceable with characters like Cypher and Silverwolf. Additionally, Acheron's E2 enables her to play with Harmony units, which are inherently better than Nihility. This enables characters such as Tribi, Robin, RMC, and Sparkle to be playable in Acheron team comps, and overall they become a much better option over Jiaoqiu. A Nihility character who is supposed to excel in his role in applying a unique debuff is being shafted by almost every support in the game. Honestly, it may be a Nihility problem since the role is a bit awkward. To put it into perspective, there's the dot playstyle, which is bound by Nihility and sustain or harmony. There's Acheron, who can play with Nihility, but that playstyle becomes suboptimal if she has E2. There's Welt.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
And I'm not gonna lie, but the concept of delaying enemies seemed interesting, but Hoyo seemed to lose interest in it. We have Silverwolf, who just adds a plethora of debuffs, Cypher, who stores damage, then drops a nuke. To top it off, we somehow have Fugue and Dahlia, two dedicated break characters in the Nihility archetype. All of these characters are tied to an archetype Forgotten can switch up in the path they want, or have a unique gimmick. For Jiaoqiu to thrive in today's meta, if he is next in line to receive Novaflare buffs, he needs to be given an identity. Maybe Hoyo could actually add some healing in his kit. For example, whenever we apply a debuff on an enemy, Jiaoqiu heals X amount, and the more debuffs we add, the more healing he does. That probably seems broken, I don't know, but let me know what you guys think what Hoyo should change about his kit. This leads to another big question. What if Jiaoqiu gets power crept again? Now, I'm no expert, but Honkai Star Rail is the worst when it comes to handling power creep. If Jiaoqiu received upgrades to his kit, I think it'll be long-lasting and impactful. I had this thought not too long ago, but even if Hoyo does consider buffing DPS characters on the next Novaflare, the buffs won't last in the long run. For example, Jingliu and Blade are still tier 1 characters if we're going off tier lists. This is assuming if the characters are at E0, so even if you want to pull for older characters, you're going to have to pull for copies of their Eidolons. Even if you do pull for their Eidolons, you still have to pull for support Eidolons if you want your DPS characters to have any meaningful damage. Again, the notice in these changes are only short term, because Giga buffing older characters would affect the sales of newer characters. Characters like Kafka, for example, aren't affected by this because she now fills more of a support role in the dot team comp, which solidifies her place in the team, making her absolutely future-proof. Now, Silverwolf's situation is a little bit tricky, because she usually gets paired up with Acheron for her debuffs. Silverwolf is playable in other team comps, but again, like Jiaoqiu, is a mere side grade compared to the likes of Tribi, Sparkle, Sunday, and Robin. In other words, like Jiaoqiu, she has nowhere to go where she is needed. With Sparkle and Black Swan on their way to receiving Novaflare buffs, Sparkle is now more reliable than ever if other team comps demand certain characters, as well as catering to the Elation gameplay. Black Swan is a win as well for dot players since she is no longer inconsistent with her gameplay. Similar to Kafka, this solidifies her role in the dot archetype, making her extremely difficult to replace. Even if she does get replaced, the archetype is getting more variety, which either way is a win. So whether or not Jiaoqiu will be next in line to receive Novaflare buffs, we can expect that if he does receive new changes, he'll fit into team comps like Dot, fulfill his role in Acheron teams, and be way more harder to replace. He'll probably have a Dahlia level buff where he just completely saves Acheron, because the way Dahlia is carrying Super Break right now is going to be my expectation when they buff Jiaoqiu. It's either that or they release a new character. Whatever Hoyo chooses, I'm fine with it. Now, everything I've said in this video, don't hold it in high regards. Don't go running around believing that Jiaoqiu is the next character to get hit with the hammer of buffs that'll instantly improve Acheron. Because to be realistic with you, I think Acheron has had her time in the meta. Even if she does receive any changes, it won't be enough that we can just ignore her Eidolons on rerun. We have to pull for Acheron's Eidolons for her to have any lasting impact on our account. With different crit DPS characters being released, we have to accept that Acheron is no exception, just one of many. I think that archetypes like Dot and Super Break can get away with these sort of things because 1. Kafka is the face of Dot and an extremely popular character. The same goes for Firefly. She is the face of Super Break and an extremely popular character too. Even if there's any new Nihility characters on the horizon, I don't think it'll make any difference for Acheron anyway. Silverwolf and Cypher are already amazing debuffers for E0 Acheron. However, with E2, I think Acheron can probably get away with using newer Harmony units and has a longer lifespan too, since she's able to hit up to 2 to 5 million damage with characters that aren't Nihility. Another bright side to look at, Elation will probably enable Nihility in some way. With what we know about Elation, the way it works, directly damage amping has zero interaction with the Elation path. So characters like Sunday, with the exception of Sparkle and maybe Tribi, would be pushed out of the meta. Now, I could be wrong and there may be Harmony characters that exclusively cater the Elation mechanic, but we'll cross that that bridge when we cross that bridge. Time will tell whether or not we get shafted. Now, what are you still doing here? Go subscribe to the channel.